Good morning, everyone. My name is Anthony Mulberry. I'm the security professional presenting today's PowerPoint. Today, we just want to talk about security risks that our organization should be aware of. I did base this list off of the OWASP top 10 list. We're going to focus on one specific topic today based on that list. All right, so getting into it, why security matters. We want to protect the privacy of our users and employees. By protecting the privacy, we basically establish trust and we can have lasting relationships. And security helps keep our business running and operating without any disruptions, right? So by following security protocols and policies, we can potentially save the company thousands, sometimes millions of dollars. The reason this happens is, with privacy, there's a lot of laws and regulations that we have to follow. If we don't follow them, we can get sued or fined, right? And security matters to our company because of compliance, like we mentioned. Threats and vulnerabilities are more commonly exploited, especially today. There's ever-growing threats. There's zero-day threats. We never know what's around the corner, and they're always going to be trying to come at us, trying to exploit our vulnerabilities. All right, so first I want to talk about what the OWASP top 10 list is, and why are there 10? You might be thinking. So the reason there's 10 because there's a group called OWASP, and they select the security risks that they find are the most common in today's world, and they create a list of the most dangerous vulnerabilities, and their goal is to help educate others on why it's important, how to safeguard against it, examples, how to mitigate it, right? So today we'll be focusing on the broken access controls, which is actually number one on the list. All right, our main focus, broken access controls. Number one on the list, like we mentioned before. So by definition, access controls are set up to ensure employees can only access what is required of their job, right? So an employee shouldn't be able to access critical organization folders that if they accidentally delete them, it could cause the system to not act appropriately and might even cause the system to go down. So this includes controls like deletion, changing, viewing, executing functions with the company system. All right. So a real world example, excuse me. At our company, there are certain admin functions that only a few people need, such as the IT department. We don't want everyone to have admin functions because if their account is compromised, the attackers would have access to the admin functions. And the reason why they have admin functions is so then someone can manage who has access to what, right? And we only want a few people to have access to that. So, a lot of the times HR departments, IT departments, they have access to this information because they need it to do their job. And what this means for our company, having proper access controls, make sure that the data is only used as intended, reduces the risk of misuse. So a lot of the times what we have to worry about is, if someone accesses a folder that they're not supposed to, are they going to use it properly and as intended? And having an organized access control policy makes it easier to identify what happened in case a breach does happen, so then we can mitigate it in the future and try to figure out exactly what went wrong. All right, a deeper understanding. So how can broken access controls even happen in the first place? So they can be exposed if the attacker uses something what's called a URL manipulation to change a direct object reference that is listed. What that could look like is you have a URL. I have an example down below. HTTP / ourcompany.com/user /554986. Right? So if they see that URL, what if they change the ending that ends in 554986, and they change it to another user ID, right? If the system doesn't properly check to make sure that they have the right permissions to access the other ID, it could just display it on the screen for them to look at. Right? Another way this could be exploited is if they gain access to an employee's account through a vulnerability such as a guessable password. Very common. From where the attacker, if they break into an admin account, you know, it's kind of game over at that point. But if they break into a baseline employee's account, they would do something called privilege escalation. So then they have those escalated features, right? They can also scan the network and analyze the network to see what the best point of attack is. So if a company is calling an API to gather data for their system, the attacker can bypass access controls because the API is a trusted source on the system. So, I mean, they can get into your system from an API point of view. That's why you want to always select safe APIs. All right, let's talk about mitigating the risk. So the first practice that our company should implement is the principle of least privilege. We talked about this a little bit before, but each employee should only have access to what they need in order to do their job. And that should go across the entire company. Another thing we can do is enforce stricter authentication controls, such as implementing multi-factor authentication for remote work, right? At my last company, we used an application called VIP Access. So if someone tries to access the company's database, they have to open up the app and enter in that code that's on the VIP Access application. Something along those lines. That would help significantly. And then employees should always inform our security team if they notice any suspicious activities. That should go without saying, but I mean, some people, unless you tell them what they need to do, they won't do it, right? And a lot of the times they'll receive emails if, say, their account is accessed from a different location, or if there's been too many attempts and they've been locked out. They should forward those to the IT department. And we need to enforce strong passwords. So, you know, an example of this is never use a common dictionary word, use special characters, and change your password every 3 months per policy. A great thing about access controls is you can specify all of these separate things. And you want to try to make the password as random as possible with a combination of uppercase, lowercase. Try not to follow a common pattern because most people will just make their password 123. Very easy to guess. And then we want to make sure that our system is always up to date to prevent vulnerabilities, make sure the software is up to date as well. So an example of this is on our website. If we do publicly announce what version we're using of a specific software, what the attackers can do is they can gather that information, plug it into a search on Google, and find out what vulnerabilities your website has. So we have to also be careful of what information we put out into the world. All right, some common tools to identify broken access controls. I really like OWASP Zap. That is one that I really found particularly interesting. So what that can do is it can be utilized to scan our application for vulnerabilities, which could really be an eye opener as to where our IT team should focus their energy, right? The great thing about OWASP Zap is it is a free tool, and it can be used automatically. So you can set up automatic scans on the system, so then you don't have to be as hands-on as you normally would have to be. All right, and then another thing that we can establish a tool for is code review practices. So starting from today, what I want our team to do is we need to establish a policy where the developer's code will be manually reviewed by the security team to ensure the proper access controls are in place, right? Since access controls are such a big topic and it is #1 on the OWASP top 10 list, we should really be focusing our energy here. And again, it's a great way to promote collaboration between the departments, so then everyone has a say, and ultimately safety is the top priority here, right? And then penetration testing. So we can use a few different penetration tools. An example of one would be the beef penetration tool. So what the beef penetration tool does is it focuses on social engineering testing, and it can be configured to see if our employees fall victim to these attacks. Say we can send out phishing emails using this penetration tools, and really we can implement any kind of penetration testing. It does cost money to implement these tests most of the time, so this would be a discussion that we further talk about. All right, let's talk about an incident that happened relating to broken access controls. So a well-known incident that happened because of broken access controls is the MGM resort breach. You can see from that hooded fellow over there, he looks very ominous. He's hacking into MGM as we speak here. This attack happened in 2023, and it was performed by a group called the Scattered Spider Hackers. Sounds very scary. What these hackers did is they used multiple techniques. They really did their research and they called and impersonated to be the help desk. And what they were doing here is they're trying to gather intel from the employees because, usually the help desk is a trusted source, so they don't have to go out of their way to try to make themselves seem real, right? And they did this by actually gathering intel on the actual help desk. So it was very convincing how they pulled this off. Once they gained enough information to access the system, they used privilege escalation to gain even more access, right? And then once they gained more access, they then deployed ransomware and they encrypted sensitive data, which basically locks up the data and they hold it for ransom. They demand a certain price to give that data back. If our company doesn't back up our data and our files, then we can't just manually go back to a backup file and restore the information, right? Which is what happened here. MGM didn't have a backup, so they couldn't just restore the files to what they were before. The ransomware attack demanded $30 million. I think that's pretty crazy. But MGM ended up paying half that amount, $15 million. But ultimately, it cost the company $100 million because this causes their operations to be focused on the attack, mitigation, and rebuilding from the attack, which takes efforts off of other areas of their business. What can we learn from this incident, though? We should definitely utilize multi-factor authentication. We should use strong passwords, and we should be aware of who is calling us by verifying them. A good lesson that we can learn from pharmacies is if you ever call a pharmacy, you'll know they'll ask you what's your name, date of birth, your address, and your phone number, no matter who's calling, right? So we can take a page out of their book. We always want to verify, help desk representatives, anyone that we essentially talk to and share information on the phone. And never click on any suspicious links or attachments. We'll have a separate training on best practices for emails. All right, so broken access controls on our business. So what's the impact that it would have on our business specifically? So broken access controls can lead to data breaches, which can damage our reputation, right? If our reputation is damaged, we will receive less business. Which if we receive less business, we wouldn't be able to have as many jobs. You get where I'm going with this. It leads to job security. So if we want to keep our jobs, we want to try to treat this as sensitively as possible. If customer data is exposed or compromised, this could also lead to legal fines. So this could cause millions of dollars legally. And broken access controls can lead to loss of goodwill. So if you don't know, goodwill is how the public views a company. Loss of trust can be damaging. It could take 10 years for us to come back from a hit from a breach even. And our customers ultimately help us succeed. Having strong access controls as well as testing them and updating them frequently will establish trust within the organization and also with the customers. So if we believe in our product, if we believe in the security, that means that we believe in ourselves. If we believe in ourselves, our customers will believe in us as well. Having access controls ensures that our data and company secrets that keep us ahead of competition remain a secret. We always want the competitive edge. And if access controls are broken, we would have to form an incident response that will use up company resources, distract us from our mission, kind of like what we talked with the MGM situation, right? If we're not focused on where we are, where we need to go, if we're looking at how to mitigate a certain breach from happening again and trying to rebuild everything, that takes a lot of money and time. All right, let's talk about key takeaways. So access control should always be reviewed based on job function. Everyone should only have access to minimum amount of information that they need to do their job. Ultimately, if access controls are ignored and not managed properly, we could see a lot of financial consequences. All stakeholders and employees should follow our policies, best practices, which we will post on our shared website. This is being posted to the SharePoint. And we should make sure that it's safe and being tested at all times. Developers, you should review the code to ensure endpoints are properly secured and that the code is sanitized and validated to protect us from data breaches and ultimately leaking out any information that we don't want out in the world. Developers should collaborate with testing methods such as penetration testing, taking time to set least privilege and manage access controls. So this should be something that we look at. I want to say every 2 weeks to a month, we should be reviewing these to make sure they're still up to date. But ultimately, on paper, it should be done every 6 months. But I would like us to do it on a monthly basis. All right, little Q&A time. So which of the following is considered a strong password? Is it A, password 123456? B, I don't like working here 1, explanation point. I see a few of you raising your hands, but that's just because you don't like working here. I'm sorry about that. C, random 108p, explanation point. Or D, R8J2N97LP GSWE @3. So the correct answer here is D. The reason why this is a strong password, it uses a combination of uppercase, lowercase letters. It seems pretty random on paper. I would imagine this one would be pretty hard to remember, but it is secure. All right, broken access controls is something that only concerns our IT department. True or false? This one is false. Broken access controls concern our entire company. And which is the most important mitigation technique? Is it multi-factor authentication, notifying the security team for suspicious activity, implementing least privilege, or all of the above? This one is all of the above. Every single one of these techniques help ensure that we have a safe protocol. Right. And broken access controls can only occur from one exploitation method. Is that true or false? This one is false. Several methods to gain access and break access controls. All right, and that'll conclude our session today. I want to thank you for attending. And just to reiterate, our success relies on each of our commitments to enhancing security and best practices. What we want to do is we want to set up monthly huddles in which we talk to the developers, the IT team, management, and non-technical management. So then we're all on the same page and we can spread more awareness about security and threats that we might see coming up shortly. Feedback is encouraged as we can all learn and develop a helpful teaching strategy. So please, if you have any questions, email me at my365.bellevue.edu or come see me at my office. These are the references for today's presentation. Feel free to write down these references. The main one here was OWASP 2021 list, the top 10 list.